Just like that. Home. I'm home. Home from the north. Crazy. It's good to be home. It's good to be home. It's always like a huge, warm welcoming when I get home. And that's something that I am very, very fortunate to have that. I know I am. I went through a lot of my life isolated away and never experiencing anything like that. So yeah, when I come home, it's really, really good. And I came home to basically Christmas. Sarah and her family, they are huge Christmas fans. And while I was away, her mom came over, and they went to town on this place. It's kind of comical. Like my buddy had to come over here and get his hair cut yesterday, and she was laughing. She said he's sitting in the chair looking around, and he's going like this. Oh man, shaking his head at how much decorating they do in the house. But anyway, I'm home. Got absolutely mauled by the dogs, the cats, the horses are screaming their heads off. And back, kids are here. And yeah, it took me 3 days to get home. 3 days. It's a mandatory ferry reservation at Horseshoe Bay to get back to Vancouver Island, which I didn't have, all sold out for 3 days straight. So I ended up having to drive all the way to the next ferry down Towson and then come home that way. But anyways, made it. Now, quick note before I get into it, I got an email here I'm going to share, got some voices to share here. While I was traveling home, I listened to podcasts. And there's a long one I listened to by Shawn Ryan podcast, and I'm going to mention it because I believe it was a rough listen. For me, it's just a rough listen. But who is it with? He did a podcast with Ryan Montgomery. Altogether, it's 5 hours and change. Holy cow. But I listened to almost the whole thing. For me, by the time I got to the very end of it, I had to shut it off. Oh, I mean, I received the message. I saw clearly what's going on, and I got it. But towards the end, they had recordings or listening to these poor teenage girls that were unfortunately lured into some dark web places online where some very black, soulless people would befriend them, manipulate them, and encourage them to share photos, and then they got them. And then they would use the photos to extort them and make them do disgusting things, including self-mutilation on video, sending pictures, murdering pets, and suicide. So anyways, this one young man whose life story he shares in this podcast with Shawn Ryan is incredible. Incredible story. And he is probably one of the top hackers on the planet, I would imagine. And he has dedicated his life to helping children. Okay? Helping children. And the reason I'm mentioning this podcast is if you are a parent of any teenagers, especially some teenage girls, boys, teenagers, kids, you really should at least skim through it. At least skim through it and find the points. But this is the young man here. What he's done is incredible. The truths that they share are alarming. They need to be heard. Mainstream news isn't going to share any of this. And I really sincerely hope that at this stage of the game, especially people who come here on a regular basis, you do not watch mainstream news anymore. I really sincerely hope you don't. And I'm not being insulting. I'm just saying this is a fact. At this stage of the game, especially if you're an awake truth seeker, independent thinker, if you even waste 1 minute watching mainstream news, that's got to be one of the most in-your-face indicators that you're just not smart yet. You're not smart. If you're watching mainstream news at even 10 seconds, you're not smart today, okay? Get smart, okay? Anyway, he is capturing thousands of monsters online. And when they show you exactly what the governments are doing to assist and moving on these culprits on unbelievable alarming. They had a politician, a high-up senator, I think, or some high political position man in Virginia. They had professionals. I wouldn't even want to repeat. It's hard to repeat some of the things. I don't want to go into details, but I mean, there was one guy on there who was a state trooper video recording violating his toddler in his full uniform, and that was available amongst each other, these people online. This is a huge problem, and it's being swept under the carpet. That's what I'm saying, all right, you guys? You need to shed light on it. You need to do something, is what I'm getting at. It was a rough listen for me because I'm a natural protector, and it's just rough. But when you hear the numbers and the reactions and the responses from who should be doing something and they're not, holy shit, it's almost to the point when I was driving home, I was like, oh my God. Once you get into that position of power, I'm almost wondering what the percentage of sexual predators it actually is that's in government, in all governments. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 60% or 70% at this stage of the game, only due to when you see what the reactions are of the law enforcement towards these animals. And it's very, very slim. It's very, very alarming. But anyway, I don't want to ramble too much about that. It's just an important message I needed to get over before I moved on to the sharing voices. It's very, very, very important message to get spread around, and you need to have your children get up to date on what's going on, okay? They were watching a recording of when I shut it off as a teenage girl literally bawling her eyes out. They didn't show anything. And you can hear these manipulative voices in the background, all online, telling her to cut her hair off, and then they just keep. That's a whole different topic, actually. The first one was on the child predators. Huge. A lot of that was on there, him catching these people, exposing them, and the lack of response from the law. You really need to see that. And then the tail end, when I had enough, was when they were exposing another dark group who have an online place where everybody goes. They intentionally prey on the right character, teenage children, and they lure them in, they get photos from them, and then they own them. And they make them do dark, horrible things. Anyway, if you would, could you please watch that? Just watch some of it, okay, so that you're aware and you know what's going on and the extent of it, and then you can go the next stage into helping prevent that happening to somebody you know. Please, okay? There's my message. I opened up the cupboard in the kitchen. All the regular mugs are gone, and it's all Christmas mugs. Just as an idea what's going on in that house. Oh, boy. Now, a lot of people, I got a lot of emails of people saying they really enjoyed the narrating as I drove home through what I think is the true Sasquatch Highway on the Duffy Lake Highway. And, yeah, if I had started narrating that from the very beginning, there would have been, there would have been way more pointing out in facts and experiences pointed out where they went down and what went down. Way more. And some people thought that I was driving and reading. No, I wasn't. I put the GoPro that I normally wear hunting sometimes, and I wrapped the strap around my cell phone holder on the dash, and I just faced it out the window and hit record and plugged that into the auxiliary electricity on the dash. And then when I got settled in for the night, then I put my little microphone into the laptop and hit audio only, and then I just talk over top of that footage. That's how I do it. But yeah, it's pretty insane how much goes on. It's pretty cool. I'd imagine. I didn't think that was going to be the reaction or the results of that. It was just like, you know, why look at my ugly, exhausted mug in a hotel room instead of watching some cool shit? That was my intention. And yeah, apparently everybody loved that. Seeing the actual places and hearing what is going down right there and what it looks like. So maybe I could do that again sometime, but maybe I will just drive and talk and point out. Possibly. Now, rambling away. Ramble-bambling. I finally shaved. That's the first thing I did when I got in the door. Sarah's got her clippers from she owned her hairstyling business, and I'm like, give me the clippers. I didn't shave once from the time I left to the time I got home. I can't stand having that crap on me, but I look like a frickin' bin diver by the time I got home. Homeless bin diver. Okay, I'm babbling. Now, let's hear some voices, shall we? Looks like I got another long email. So, we're going to share this. Maybe it was shared before, or maybe it wasn't. We're going to find out. But I have a feeling I have left out a lot of super long emails just by accident because by the time I get to them, I've already started recording for quite some time. One more quick mention. One more. The Shawn Ryan thing, you know, I think Shawn is a legitimate man. He's not scared, and he doesn't seem to do the mainstream, you know, a lot of podcasts, they get all the most popular people in the loop, in the group. You know, the cool guy club. Most of the popular podcasts all have all their cool guy club podcast people on there to keep building up their clout. And I don't see Shawn Ryan as one of those people. He has had some popular people on his podcast, but I noticed I was listening to one and he kind of snickered at the Bigfoot thing with a fella on there talking about aliens and all sorts of shit. And I do have a direct link with Shawn Ryan, a mutual friend. And I would, you know me, I've kept it about you. I've kept it about everybody, all the people. That's what I have tried to intentionally keep this channel about, is all about you and not creating clout. I don't need frickin' clout. I just need all of you to be heard. I need all of you to share your truth of what you know and what you've seen with each other. Word for word. That's what I need. That's what I thrive on. And that's what I feel is very, very important. But I think Shawn's a solid guy, and he kind of snickered at the Sasquatch topic. And you know what? Like, I've turned down, I don't know how many podcast invites I don't even reply. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know. You know, I've just been jaded with this celebrity shit from a lot of the soulless people that I have guided over the years and met over the years. I'm rambling, aren't I? Too much coffee. But I think I would talk to Shawn. If Shawn was open to it, I would talk to him and fill him in on the truth. That would be my motive. A man like him, he needs to fair crack at hearing the truth instead of possibly snickering at this topic, which is the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe topic, because it's very, very real. And I have a lot of respect for him, and I just think it's kind of sad. It would be sad for him to go through life seeking truth and not having fair crack at this actual truth, and dismissing it with a chuckle. You know what I mean? I'm rambling, aren't I? I hope I'm making sense. Like Sarah said, you know, I just did, 3 weeks of talking to myself in the woods. I don't feel I'm that smooth of a talker at times. Anyway, let's get into it. Yeah, I'm just saying, maybe I will. Maybe I might send a message over and see if he's open to having a conversation about what we know. You know? He's a good guy. He's worthy of time. He's worthy of our time, is what I guess what I'm trying to say. I'd be ashamed for him to not have access to this truth without it being a joke. My first encounter with, caps lock, my Bigfoot. It's an email shared with all of you through me. Steve, my apology for the length of this email, but I felt I had to get out most of the details. Name withheld. Just call me Big Bear. Okay, Big Bear. This story has only been shared with a select few friends over the years. Ridicule and a constant stream of teasing from those few occasions have pushed my memory back. Isn't that unfortunate? My wife and I have followed your channel through the last year, and I've just received your book from Amazon. Steve, reading through the story about your previous girlfriend and the winter encounter on the highway close to Blue River, British Columbia, has brought a ton of these memories back. I know that area well, traveling that highway for years, working in Alberta, and having family throughout British Columbia. Your previous girlfriend's encounter occurred less than 12 miles from my encounter. Uh-oh, no way. Less than 12 miles. That could be possibly where I shot my largest mule deer and where a friend of mine got growled out of the woods. Here's the first encounter with my Bigfoot, and he has caps in my Bigfoot. I'm now 59. The following took place over 40 years ago. Summer holidays of my youth, 1974, I was 13. My family had arranged to have a joint camping trip with two of my father's workmates and their families. The camp party consisted of my parents and my brother, one other father and his two teenage sons, and a third man and wife with a teenage daughter and son. I was the youngest of the group. Having zero family camping experiences in the outdoors to that date, I had some concerns. With my youth filled with negative interactions with my father and being in such a remote location only added to those concerns. This is sounding familiar. This might be the kid trout fishing. The lake of choice was in the interior of British Columbia. At the time, the lake was a 2-hour highway trip and a 20-mile drive up a single-lane logging road with many sheer drop-offs and cliffs. Then, 1.5-mile hike and a half-mile short canoe trip down the lagoon. Once getting to the lake, this little lagoon fed into the southeast end of a large bay about a mile long east to west. Beautiful snow-covered mountains to the north. Needless to say, extremely remote. Quite the trip for an inexperienced youth. The south bay in the lake had a great sandy beach leading up to the very sheltered moss-covered bench under the pines and cedars. Just to the back of this area was a swamp that would be perfect for moose. Setting up camp consisted of two 12-foot by 12-foot canvas tents and several smaller pup-style shelters for the kids. A big fire was set for the cooking, and my dad, one of the other fathers, and my older brother headed out into the canoe for a fishing trip around the bay before sunset. Being a bit let down for not being included in the fishing adventure, I left the camp and began to explore along the area between the beach and the swamp. Heading to the west of the bay, I came across another creek that came down the south-facing slope. The underbrush was quite thick and a lot of mud. I poked around here for a way to cross over to the west side of the lake, which had a good rock-covered slope to the water. My thoughts were to get my fishing gear and come back to fish along the creek outlet along those rocks on the shaded side of that bay. Seeing many small ripples at the surface indicating trout were certainly active in that area. Time ran out and I headed back to the camp. I saw the canoe coming into the camp, but still about a quarter mile out in the bay. And I arrived just as the canoe beached and the fishermen were relaying their story of not getting any fish. My father came to me and mentioned that I should not have left the camp unsupervised, and made quite a show of disciplining me. Both of the adults had said they saw a large bear just across the creek, less than a quarter mile from me, and my explorations could have ended in a much different way. Taking this to be just a story to scare me into staying around camp, I held very little trust in their story. My father was on my case all evening, and as the beer and booze started to flow, he became more adamant. Yeah, we read this. You know what? I'm going for it anyway. He became more adamant that he would take me in the morning and prove that a bear was there and was very close to me. My brother was relaying his side of the story, and that it was the biggest bear he had ever seen. He said it was up on 2 legs and walked around the mouth of the creek for quite a while. Then walked up on the rocks and into the trees, up the bank and into the timber, following the creek. These clarifications were echoed by the other father with quite a serious bent to his demeanor. My initial thoughts were that the amount of booze being consumed was leading to more fear-mongering, and he was just embellishing the bear story in attempts to further scare me. Good old alcohol, right? Good old alcohol. Who would drink and take their children can't, yeah. Sorry. The next morning, sure enough, my father was getting ready to take me fishing and prove the bear story. We packed light, just a small tackle box, just a small tackle box each, and our respective fishing rods, and headed out down the sandy beach to the west. Once getting to the creek, we headed up into the timber to find a way to cross the creek as the mud at the lake shore was too deep to walk across. We came to a spot where a large tree had been blown down and went across the creek, about 5 or so feet above the creek. And as we were crossing, my father stopped and pointed down into the mud below the tree. Sure enough, there was a track in the mud. We climbed down to investigate. He placed his palm, fingers outstretched, and the pad of this track was wider than from his thumb to his little finger. Wow. Quite scared at this point, for sure. My father was a bit tentative and not so sure and forceful as his usual demeanor. He was rationalizing to me that this was a bear's front paw print. Yet there was definitive heel marks. I picked up on his tentative and nervous nature, but wrote it off to him perhaps being afraid of the presence of such a large animal in the vicinity of camp. We continued around the timber to the west and down to the rocky edge of the lake. We scouted around, but found no further tracks from the creek. We began casting out and started fishing, working the west side of the bay, north and away from the creek's mouth. And my father could cast significantly further out than I could, but was having some success catching a few trout. My casting was bringing in more fish, smaller but certainly more productive in numbers. A great deal of fun and excitement on my part for having such success. My success seemed to be coming from my dad's ability to cast out further and bring those fish closer to shore. Several times he told me to back off and give him some more space, that I was crowding him and should not be so afraid of the bear. He would then move further up the shoreline away from me. Too bad the bear didn't get him. 5 hours later, about noon, I thought it best to clean the fish and place them in my bag, thinking I could leave them in the canvas sack submerged in the lake to keep them fresher. I began to clean them on a larger rock out from the shoreline, when the gulls started to dive bomb me in attempts to scare me off the fish and get an easy meal. While dodging and twisting this way and that, I happened to look back down the lake to the creek, and I saw it. There by the creek, on the west side, less than a quarter mile away, right at the timberline, was a large, dark brown, almost black, with silver-tipped fur or hair thing. Now I'm thinking this is the bear from the previous evening's story. It was up on its hind legs, and just as the story the previous night detailed, but slightly bent over, one front paw on a large cedar tree on its right side. Its back was to me and looking up into the creek area, peering slightly left and right with its head, as if to get a better view up the creek. This lasted only a few seconds, and then it began to turn its head left, looking down the beach to our camp, pausing only slightly. It continued to turn and look directly north at our location. For what seemed like eternity, I swear, it stared right into my eyes. I was frozen in place, unable to breathe. This was not a bear. No snout for a nose. Ears on either side of the head, not on top like a bear. Wide, flat nose and large lips under a long, flat, rippled forehead. Large, forward-looking eyes, definitely more human than bear. Even the gulls had left. The thing then quickly completed its turn and burst two-legged in 3 strides across the rocky shoreline, 30 yards or so, dropped to all fours as it hit the area with the small clumps of willows and brambles, another 20 yards or so, and bolted up the 30-degree slope into the tree line. Incredible, fast, gone. Just the sounds of the smaller undergrowth being smashed as he worked further and further up the slope, until no more. Nothing. Just complete and utter silence, as if the wind itself had been scared away. Steve, I've had many bear encounters since that day, and not one of them, black bear or even a few grizzly, moved like that thing did. The length of the 3 strides it took on 2 legs, then going down on all fours, more like an ape, but certainly not The typical sideways lunging of the chimps and apes. More linear, like a wolf or dog. This thing could move. Blazingly fast. Incredible rippling of the thigh and shoulders under the glistening hair. It took one sideways glance back at me before hitting the tree line and shot up into the timber. My father was just around the corner from me, 60 or so yards away. His back was facing me as he worked his way further north along the west shoreline. I tried to call out to him, but could not find my voice. I began to shake and tremble uncontrollably. I had to take a seat on the rocks to try to calm myself. My head was on a swivel, back to the creek and along the shoreline to where my father was to the north of me. Back and forth, almost full panic, expecting that thing to come out of the tree line at any second and tear me apart. I'm not sure how long I sat there, but I was brought out of fear when I could see my father heading back to me. I gathered up my things and started to head his way. He asked what the issue was. He had noticed me just sitting there for an extended period and had not responded to his calls. I relayed the events and asked if he'd seen it. I realized he was just around a small point and would not have been able to see the creek area from his line of sight. And his answers were stern and demeaning, telling me to grow up, and it was just a bear. But I could see him looking up and down the lake shore into the tree line. He insisted we keep fishing as we worked our way north and around a smaller second bay. He insisted there would be better fishing in this bay. Man, I could not get anything going at all. No luck. I was casting like an insane man, sometimes hitting the rocks at my feet or blasted down the rocky shore and getting hooked up in the shallow rocks. Insane glancing up and down at the shoreline and back up into those trees as far as my eyes would penetrate the darkness of that old growth forest. Several times I could hear branches breaking and screeching of the trees making me jump uncontrollably. My father was telling me to settle the hell down and relax. The bear's long gone. He'd not want you anyways. You're too damn skinny and shaking like a little old rabbit. Yeah, right, I thought. At least I could outswim or outrun you. After only a few more hours wasted, my father decided it was time to head back. Yep, back down the shoreline to the south, back to the camp, heading right back to where this thing had been. No choice, really. No other way to get back up the bay, across that creek bed, and down the beach and back to camp. And as we worked our way back, I was constantly looking back over my shoulders to the tree line and up into the timber. Several times I heard loud cracking and groaning. Not quite what I would describe as tree knocking as described by others, but more of just deadfall being broken loudly. About 50 to 70 yards or so up the steep slope behind us. The sound was not a growl, more of a moan or a groan, low pitch and deep, reverberating. Not the loud screaming that most describe. And needless to say, I was again crowding my father and was admonished many times to stay back and not let fear get to me. That the sounds were just the trees rubbing as the wind hit the tops. A couple of times I'd shiver, and the hair on the back of my neck would stand up feeling like wire. I'd look up the slope into the timber, and several times I thought I could see that shape and color again, peering down from the timber. It was almost as if it were herding us back down the lake towards our camp. And as we came to the creek once again, I took note of the size of the big cedar tree that this thing was leaning, his right forepaw hand. Steve, that thing would have been just over 10 feet tall. Shivers ran up and down my spine, and I again started to shake uncontrollably. My father had to yell at me to get my ass in gear and catch up. He'd already crossed the creek and was on the beach area on the opposite side of the creek. I bolted up the bank, across that tree, and burst out onto the sandy beach, running at full tilt. The total return trip from that second smaller bay back past the creek to the camp took the better part of 2 hours. The longest 2 hours of my life. 2 hours walk to go fishing. That's a good chunk of hiking, actually. Most people usually camp right where they fish, right? As we approached camp, my father stopped and sternly told me not to say anything about what I said I saw. as I would scare the other children and women. I stayed back away from the camp, finishing cleaning my fish and prepping them for dinner before handing them to my mom for cooking. I walked through camp to the east and went down the beach, looking back to the creek area and along the west bank where we had been fishing all day. I never saw anything but was replaying that few seconds a million times in my head. One conclusion kept coming up. That was not a bear. That was something else. Once again, the others had been fishing in the canoe for the day. Did not get a thing, but my dad's 2 fish and my 15 were more than enough to have given a great feed to the campers. Dinner was great, and again, the fire brought more booze and stories. The stories began to flow, and of course, my story, as related by my father, was ripe for ridicule and laughter directed my way. As night came on, a large drift log with roots still attached was brought down the beach and the fire moved under it. This was a suggestion from one of the fathers as a way to keep my bear away. Keep the fire roaring, they said. Sleeping accommodations were tight, with most of the other teens not being allowed to sleep outside in the smaller tents, but were forced to make do in one of the 12 by 12 tents for fear of my bear. Sometime that night, around 2 a.m. or so, I had to get out to relieve myself. It was very, very silent, with tons of stars and a great view looking south. Snow-covered mountains reflected in the still lake, and enough light from the moon to see quite far down the beach each way. What struck me most was the silence of that moment. And once again, that feeling of being watched came over me. And the sensation was coming from the swamp area behind us to the south. I quickly got back in the tent, shaking with fear. It took a long time for sleep to come. But when I woke, I was the only one left in the tent and could hear my mom making breakfast, and the smell of the bacon was very inviting. I dressed excitedly, anticipating a great fire, cooked breakfast with tons of bacon. And I could overhear my mom saying she heard something at the back of the tent last night, and was angry that my dad had not done anything about it. He again was just brushing it off as if it was a moose or something, but he had not gone out to check. She was very upset at him for this, stating, "That damn thing was right at the back of the tent. It was pushing and shoving on the side of the tent, shaking the tent poles, breathing and snorting, stinking like hell warmed over." I then froze, and the memory of my late night's short trip out of the tent came rushing back. I snuck out of the tent and went behind it towards the swamp area to explore and see if there were any tracks that I could discover. Bringing evidence in these tracks in defense of my mom was my goal. My plan was to track back and forth through this area, east and west from the tent, to about 50 yards or so at most. My thoughts were that whatever had come at night, and the fact that there were so many adults and noise going on, this thing would not come close to camp. And I'd only gone about 10 yards from the back of the tent and found another of those tracks like we had seen the previous day in that creek bed. Steve, this was not a bear. This was just like my barefoot print in the beach sand, but huge. It was more than 3 times wider and longer than mine, with definite 5 toes, wide ball and heel. The heel was deep, then the ball and the toes. There's only a single track that I found, but most of the area was moss-covered around and under the trees, or hard-packed trails from previous campers that would not have left much of an impression. The track was pointing in the direction of the swamp away from the camp. This freaked me right out. How was I to bring this to the camp? How was I to tell my father about this and not be ridiculed again? How was I to bring this to my mom and not have her freak out? She was scared enough with the thought of a bear or some other such beast, as she described it, being in the area. We stayed only one more night, sleepless night, and packed up the next morning without incident. I spent most of the rest of my youth in the outdoors and learning as much as I could about survival and learning about bears. Many bear encounters along rivers and lakes over the years, with many solo canoe camping trips to the backwoods and up and down the Thompson and Clearwater valleys, lots of fishing trips to many lakes between Clearwater and 100-Mile House areas, but only one other trip to my Bigfoot Lake, and from the West End, not through that South Bay area. That second trip is another story for a later email, and yet another encounter with my Bigfoot. I've driven through this area many times as I transit from Alberta back home to family in the interior, and each time I go by the access road to my Bigfoot Lake, my nerves act up, and I'm super tense for the next hour or so. The story your previous girlfriend shared, having my encounter, happened in such a physical close proximity, and those feelings I have had when transitioning through that area, coincidence? I don't think so. When I read that story in the book, wow, what a crazy amount of energy that story brought out. All that pent-up frustration over the years just came bursting forth, bringing back memories and details I'd shut down. This prompted me to share my details with my wife, and she has prompted me to write it out and share with you. I've been silent about this, only sharing it with a few close friends over the years, filled with ridicule at the time of the incident, and every time I've shared it since has kept me silent. Steve, I know what I saw. It was no bear. I now believe my father and the other men at the camping trip also know, but chose to ridicule and use me as a scapegoat for the truth in order not to scare the others. Not one person over the years has accepted my sighting at face value, only responding with ridicule and laughter. Not one of the other campers that weekend has ever shared their experiences. I've always thought that some of the other older teenage boys must have heard or experienced something. Not once has anyone in my family ever said anything about that weekend. And I share this with the hopes that it'll help someone who's repressed their encounter and been silent for too long, and for those that have someone come and share their story. Listen and accept it for what it is. It does not matter if you believe or not. The ridicule has to stop. Regards, Big Bear. You know what? That email should almost be shared once a month with the messages in there and the examples in there, don't you think? Don't you think? Worthy. That's worthy of my time. That's worthy of a lot of time, this email. I'm going to mark this as look into. I'm going to do a search and see if you did send me your other experiences. Look into. Isn't that sad? I wonder who was the first person to stop or make it more common to ignore young children than to look at them and listen to them. What did you see out there? Who's talking to you? What waved at you in the back 40? You know what I mean? This information needs to get out. All these voices we have heard here need to be heard by everyone. Do you know what I mean? Don't you think? There's so much. This isn't entertainment. You know, this isn't a place for entertaining. Like you all know, we've never said like, subscribe, and share here ever, not once. What for? You know what I mean? What for? I still am firm. You can't. I believe firmly you can't. You can't force this topic on anyone. Do you know what I mean? It's a waste of time. And if you are trying to do it, you're only doing it to make a buck. That's it. Just like the TV shows, just like a lot of people, the so-called big names. You know what I mean? Hey, I need $250,000 to make another Bigfoot movie. Do you really? What's that going to do? What's that going to do in the end? Maybe I'm sounding like a dick. I don't care. I'm just talking. It's rational thinking. Trying to make sense of what people do and what the results are when it comes to this topic and more, right? I don't give a shit what anybody says. There isn't a Bigfoot show or movie that's going to do more than what all of you have done. It's not possible. And furthermore, it's just relaying what all you guys share anyway. Right? I was biting my lip and starting to ramble. I'm just saying. I've always known that you just cannot. It's just like that. I'll never forget. My friend of mine, doctor, said it. A veterinarian in the interior, and he trusts me. He knows what I'm talking about. And he just said flat out, He said, Steve, it takes a lot of time. When I brought the topic up, he goes, it takes a lot of time, man. It takes a lot of time to look into something like this, and it's time I just don't have. I'm sure there's some shit going on, but I just don't have enough time, and I'm not really that interested. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. I get it. But at least people in my circles know that, I've done my part. I've shared truth. That's all I can do. I shared the truth. There you go. At least if something does happen to you in the future that just might have life-changing results in a negative way, at least I did my part and I attempted to give you that heads up so that you could possibly deal with it in a better way than most when they get this reality stuffed in their face without asking for it. You know what I mean? Without asking for it. Yeah. Man, I really appreciate this man who sent this story in and everyone else. Just really, really appreciate people coming forward with this hard truth to come forward with. It's a very tough thing to come forward with, especially today. Well, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Who gives a shit what anybody thinks? I honestly do not give a flying shit what anybody thinks. And once you do get to that space, you're free. You're a free human being. And you get a fair crack at being happier than shit. The second you stop worrying or thinking about what people think about you, Crab in a bucket. I don't think I'm going to share another email. We'll leave it at that one today. I've got a real stinky, filthy truck loaded with shit I have to clean out. But getting back to the kids thing, though, the young people thing, I think I might even be getting close to that age where I could possibly be able to pass on some advice, maybe. Life advice, maybe. I'm almost that age. Maybe not quite. I don't know. I'm still learning. But, when it comes to this topic or life in general, if I could teach a whole huge room of children something right now, I think I would probably teach them about being a crab in a bucket. Teach them the story of the crab in a bucket as soon as you can. It's very helpful in life because I was that crab in a bucket for a long time. And what a crab in a bucket is when you're a bucket of crabs and you're trying to crawl up. You're trying to go up and get out of that bucket. And all the other crabs are in the bucket and keep clawing at you, trying to pull you back in. You just want to break free of all those crabs that want to stay on the bottom of the bucket that goes nowhere. And you want to climb upwards and out of that bucket and keep going in that direction. And you're a crab in a bucket. And I don't know why I seem to have been drawn to or gravitated to all those crabs for a great deal of my life. And it's a frustrating thing to be aware of until you finally figure it out. And then you shake free of all those crabs in the bucket and you leave them in that bucket and you leave them there and you go forward. And you go forward. And then you eventually you smash your goals and you become quite happy. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of children need to learn once. I got a whole pile I think I can share eventually, but that's a good lesson, is to teach your children right away about being a crab in a bucket. Right? And that goes a long way in life. Breaking free of the ridicule, the people worrying about what they think, and enabling them to keep you suppressed and keep you down. Sucks ass, but you can shake free of those crabs in the bucket. It sounds like our friend here that just emailed in did just that. And you know what? If you're still listening, I'm going to search your email and see if you did send me the other experiences. But I probably said this before. If you could share this video with all of those who are supposedly supposed to be close to you, and the way I like to say it, ram this video right up their asses. Anyway, enough babbling for now. I'm out of here. Oh shit, I forgot to mention too at the beginning is you hear about that bear attack, the latest in British Columbia. 11 children got attacked by a frickin' grizzly bear up the coast. What a terrifying experience. There's going to be some scars there. A couple critically injured. Apparently one of the teachers took the brunt of the attack, which you normally do. Very, very sad. What an extreme case. I cannot believe how many people have been attacked by grizzly bears just in British Columbia alone this year. It's got to be over 20. It seems for a while there, 2 people got mauled by a bear today. 2 people got attacked. A man just died of his wounds from getting attacked by a bear. It was endless this past few months. It's just nonstop. It was like weekly. Somebody's getting it from a grizzly bear. And there is no shortage of them. They are far from endangered. There are so many grizzly bears existing today. It's absolutely mind-numbing. And there's always been a responsible grizzly bear hunt here for generations. Generations. And it doesn't do anything to their population. Human hunting grizzly bears doesn't have any negative impact on their population. But you know what it does do? It shows them and teaches them that no, we are the alphas. We're the ones you got to be scared of. And believe me, they are very intelligent animals. When they realize that we mean business, they avoid us like the plague. And people don't get mauled and chewed on. They know we're badasses. But because the people in the city, the non-hunters, the emotional, reactive people, they decided, well, we don't hunt grizzly bears anymore. Oh, don't we? You don't even fish, you piece of shit. Who is the minister in the Ministry of Environment? I've spoke with biologists who told me flat out, our bosses don't even hunt and fish. They don't have a clue. It's all political, emotional. But at least they're reaping the rewards now, right? There's, at least 11 kids got chewed on by a grizzly this time, instead of just 2 people at a time every week for the past few months. Idiots. Idiots. The grizzly bear hunt needs to be reinstated. That's all there is to it. And there's a lot of groups that are against it, right? You got your ecotourism. It's people go in zodiacs and look at bears and take pictures of them. The sea wolves. Yeah. I remember back when they were eliminating the grizzly hunt, the legal, sustainable grizzly hunting in British Columbia. There was some people who managed to, well, it's the mainstream news, right? The mainstream news gave the mic to the first Native community member they could. They would speak against the grizzly hunt and say that we are the First Nations people don't hunt grizzly bears. And they found a guy from a Native community in the city of Vancouver, right? Meanwhile, the statements they were making for mainstream news from representing all First Nations, we don't hunt grizzly bears, we don't kill grizzly bears, it's sacred. You lying piece of shit is what that guy was. A lying piece of shit. I don't know how many Native guides I've worked with over the years in the North. And those guys had killed a lot of grizzly bears. And all of the northern community, I'm not that familiar with Native communities that have grizzly bears around them in the south end of the province. I have spent most of my time in the north. Every single frickin' First Nations person I know in the north is terrified of grizzly bears. They don't like them. And you guys who are on my channel, who are those people, you know what I'm talking about. Go ahead and throw it down in the comment section below. Don't like them. Don't like them. Period. Okay, I'm rambling. The coffee is really potent this morning, isn't it? I'm just saying the grizzly bear thing needs to be put under control. Got 11 kids getting chewed on now. If the grizzly bears were being responsibly hunted like normal, I got a funny feeling that nope, those grizzly bears would have avoided where all those humans were like the plague, like they normally do. Here's another. We're going to give you one more example where I was guiding one outfit. I got it for numerous years in the northeastern Rocky Mountains. My camp was on the north slopes of the Rocky Mountains, our camp, okay? And we normally had 2 or 3 grizzly tags in that camp. Now, our southern camps were on the other side, the south side of the Alaska Highway. The camps that did not have a grizzly tag available, they had grizzly problems in camp all fall. All fall. It got to the point where the conservation officers just said, just shoot him. You got a problem bear, just shoot it. Right? But in our camp, where we'd have 2 to 3 grizzly tags a fall, and we only shot the old, mature boars, all grizzly bears saw us and gone. Like greased lightning. Avoided us like the plague. There you go. Problem solved. Right? 11 children probably wouldn't have been mauled by a frickin' grizzly bear had normal harvesting of grizzly bears been going down still, like it has for years. Anyway, there's my ramble bamble. Send out our prayers and thoughts for all those children to heal. Imagine the scars all those kids are going to have. Imagine the possible emotional trauma those kids are dealing with and going to deal with for the rest of their lives. Imagine that. My God, a child getting mauled and attacked by a frickin' grizzly bear, and all the screams from all of those children as they're all getting chewed on. Oh, gross. All right, there you go. There you go. My initial arrival home and my babbling is over. I will be back here tomorrow. Sarah's cookbook is available. All excited. I've ordered mine. I bought some. She doesn't know it, but I bought her book. Can't wait to get that in the mail. She said she still has a sale on her stickers. There's a big sale going on for her Club in Our Return stickers, I think. Whatever she's got in there. And what else? I think that's about it. So, share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you get your experiences shared word for word, all right? You count, you're important, and what you experienced needs to be heard by many, many people, okay? It helps people. Helps people. Membership subscription. I guess it's Christmas time. I'm gonna go help do the we try to ramp it up feeding kids this time of year, and at least, you know, when we go out and find that very needy mother and her children and dump all that food on them, you know, especially this time of year. It's a real sad time of year for a lot of people that are in a bad place, right? The Christmas season coming up, and at least when we do this at this time of year, then who knows? You know, maybe those extra few dollars we help save that struggling family will help her possibly even have a gift for her kids, or maybe it'll enable them to have that gas money or that bus ticket to actually be able to go see family for Christmas or whatever. It just helps. So that's, if you are a subscriber to this channel, that's where it goes. And I'm gonna go on the next shop, and I'll go on a couple of deliveries. It just kills me going on the deliveries, seeing those kids. It kills me. Sarah usually comes home crying, but whatever, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So for all you subscribing to the channel, thank you so much. And I don't keep tally, but we fed a lot of children. we fed a lot of kids. So there. I think I could probably stop rambling now. And I'll be back tomorrow.